Welcome back to Point of View, where we bring you all sides of the story and you get your voice in the broadcast. Tonight, Berg is talking about something no one's really talking about. Let's get right to it. AM 1100, the flag host of the Berg Show. Chris, the Iowa caucuses, they're kicking off in about 20 minutes. Tonight, you've got a political savant with you to tell us who he thinks is going to win and what it really means for the rest of the election.
Yeah, thanks, Stephanie. Very special guest tonight in the Hot Box. It's the president of Americans for Tax Reform, Grover Norquist. Grover, thanks for being with me this evening. I want to ask you, Grover, initially, hey, who's going to win tonight? But this afternoon, 40% of the Iowa voters were still swayable, so it's anybody's guess. I want to get to a couple things, and one that I think is even more important than who's going to win tonight, and that is the voter turnout. Do you agree with me, or am I missing something?
No, I think you're right. Look, the thing to look for is how excited Republicans are. Polls across the country have said that Republicans are more excited about the 2012 election than Democrats. One measure will be how many people show up to vote. About 100,000 Republicans showed up 4 years ago. Does that number go up? That'd be very healthy for the Republican Party if it does.
Now, one key thing also that nobody's talking about is the delegate game has changed. It's no longer a zero-sum game, winner takes all. Explain what's changed and why that's so important leading into New Hampshire, South Carolina, and the other states.
For caucuses and primaries held before April 1st, so January, February, March, first 3 months of the year, any caucus, any primary, those delegates will be awarded on a proportional basis. So if one of the candidates gets 30%, that might be enough to have more votes than everybody else. And in previous years, you'd get all of a particular state's delegates, so that winning a few early states gave you some real advantages. Now, a candidate like Ron Paul, who's polling 10% consistently, at least for the first 3 months, he'll walk away with 10% of the delegates. Well, if you've got several candidates, each walking away with 10 or 15%, nobody gets to be the big winner early. This is going to go on longer than you'd otherwise expect.
Could it be similar to the Democrat convention that took place in 2008?
I think it could, and part of the reason is that they also, Democrats have for some time had a proportional representation vote. The other piece to that puzzle was that Obama won because he focused on getting to caucus states, not just Iowa, which gets a lot of attention, but a lot of other states, Idaho and others that have caucuses. And there are real numbers, they add up, and it tend to be smaller states, but that's what put him ahead of Hillary Clinton. She was planning on winning the big states and being the nominee very quickly. What I do not know is how much time Romney's put into caucus states. We do know that Ron Paul has put a lot of time and effort into caucus states because that's where he's traditionally done best. So watch for a real knockdown, drag-out on some of those caucus states with everybody going home with some votes.
I want to bring it a little bit closer to home. As you know, there's a couple of U.S. Senate races coming up, one in Minnesota, one in North Dakota. Let's start with Minnesota first. U.S. Senator Amy Klobuchar is up. Is she safe in your opinion, or could a Republican flip that seat?
A Republican could. They've got to get a serious candidate. I don't know that they have one necessarily who's does that, but maybe Coleman could come back in. It is a state that just elected a Republican House and a Republican Senate, and almost a Republican governor in the last election. So it is a state that's been trending in a more conservative direction, and the incumbent senator, has voted for all of the things that Obama told her to vote for. She can't run independent of the Obama problems and failures.
Let's go with a hypothetical here in North Dakota. The U.S. Senate seat obviously is open. Senator Kent Conrad's retiring. Many people here in the state are presuming it's going to be Congressman Rick Berg, the Republican, versus the former North Dakota Attorney General Heidi Heitkamp in this race. Who wins this race, in your opinion, and why?
Well, it's been a tending Republican state. It's certainly had Republican governors and Republican legislatures. Those of us outside of North and South Dakota have always wondered a little bit what you guys were thinking when you send us some of the senators you have in the past, from Daschle to Conrad. But I'm hopeful that the trends in both North and South Dakota are to vote for senators in line with the people you vote for president, because sending Obama, 2 or 4, robotic yes votes for his agenda is not in the interests of the people of North Dakota.
Last question for you. It's multiple choice. I want to hear this. Two hypothetical scenarios here. One is the Republicans hold the House majority and win the presidency, but don't get the majority in the Senate. Or your other choice is the Republicans go out, they keep the majority in the House, get a majority in the Senate, but don't win the presidency. Which option do you choose and why?
Well, I don't have to choose. I think you can say with good optimism that the Republicans will hold the House because they've got a strong majority now, and with redistricting it'll be even stronger. And in the Senate, there are 23 Democrats up, including the one Democrat seat in North Dakota. Half of them are in trending Republican states. The 10 Republicans up are largely in Republican states also because they survived the bad year of 2006. So the Democrats are almost certain to lose a net 4 seats, which would give the Republicans, of 23, the Republicans don't have to have a landslide. They just have to do vaguely poorly, and they get a majority of the Senate. The big question now is, do you add a Republican president to a Republican Senate and a Republican House? And remember, not only do the Republicans have 23 Democrat seats to go after in 2012, just 2 years later, in 2014, there are 20 Democrat seats up and only 13 Republican seats. So in the next two election cycles, 43 Democrat Senate seats up, 23 Republicans. Almost all of the Republican seats are very safe, and half of the 43 Democrat seats are vulnerable. With any wind at their back, the Republicans will actually have 60 Senate seats in 2014. So the Democrats are going to be in the minority in the House and Senate for some time. The only question is whether they also lose the presidency.
Grover Norquist, president of Americans for Tax Reform. Grover, thanks so much for being in the Hot Box tonight. If you want to find out more about him and his organization, you can go to atr.org. Look, the number one thing you want to focus on tomorrow, it's not who wins the Iowa caucus. It's going to be voter turnout, and here's why. As Grover alluded to, back in 2008, roughly 100 to 119,000 Iowans showed up in the caucuses. Now, that's out of a state of 3 million people. If you see that number hit about 140, 150,000 tomorrow, it's going to show you that the GOP voter base is excited, they're enthusiastic, and it's going to pose problems for President Barack Obama in this 2012 presidential race, because some of the states, whether it be Ohio, Indiana, or Nevada, for example, that are those swing states, are going to be extremely vulnerable. I mean, right now, Nevada's got nearly the highest unemployment in the nation. Clearly, that could be an easy one to flip and make the race to 270 electoral votes for this GOP nomination much easier. Stephanie?
I got a quick question for you, Chris. Are the Iowa caucuses overhyped with media and everything, or do they matter? What do you think?
I think they are overhyped because you look at who's won as of late, it hasn't really predicated who's going to win that GOP nomination. Typically, it's been South Carolina. If you look at South Carolina right now, Governor Haley's on the Romney train, and so she's going to go stump for him over the next few days, which obviously is going to go bode well for his campaign.
All right, Chris, always good to have you in from the Chris Berg Show on AM 1100 The Flow.